call on question number 5 in the name of the Honourable Barbara Edmonds.
Whakawe lahu, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does she stand by her statement, quote, "What New Zealanders can have confidence in is that they have a government that is delivering what it said it would," unquote? If so, now that the Family Boost has begun being paid, how many families have actually received $250 a fortnight promised in the National Party's election campaign?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr Speaker, to the first part of the question, yes. And to the second part of the question, the member's assertion is wrong. The commitment was for up to $250 a fortnight, and I am advised that in some circumstances families could get even more than $250 a fortnight. At the time of the budget, Treasury's modelling indicated that around 1.9 million households, 3.5 million New Zealanders, would benefit from tax relief and Family Boost, on average by $60 a fortnight, and households with children would benefit on average by $78 a fortnight. I'm also advised that at least one party in the election was guaranteeing precisely $0 a fortnight in tax relief.
That's not true, actually.
Oh,
Supplementary.
Hang on.
What a triumph it was.
In silence. Respect for your amendment. Point of order.
If I come to the House with the Labor Party's policies, which showed that we were actually offering tax reductions for New Zealanders, will Nicola Willis have to withdraw and apologise for that?
Just a moment. I am going to hear that again because I couldn't hear it because of the outburst. It's a point of order. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
I've just finished.
Yeah, what did you say? Because I didn't hear it. No, I don't want you to interpret it, sorry. We've only got one language in this House that I understand. Okay, sorry, Mr Peters, if you don't mind, I'd like him to repeat his point of order.
Mr Speaker, we've already had one minister in the government today have to come and correct an answer that they gave making allegations about the previous Labor government, and so will Nicola Willis have to do the same tomorrow?
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Finance Minister Willis said one party, and straight away he took the guilt and confessed.
Yeah, well, thank you for that point of order.
New point of order.
New point of order from the Honourable Karen McAnulty.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. That question was on notice, and despite the comments by the Minister disagreeing with the so-called assertions in it, up to is inclusive of, and so a question asking for the exact number of 250 is still valid. Whether they disagree with how they presented it or not, up to includes 250, the Minister could still have made that point but actually answered the question, and she did not.
Well, I think she did certainly address the question, and that's the only judgment that I can make about questions. Does the Honourable Barbara Edmonds have further supplementaries?
How many families have actually received the $250 a fortnight as promised by Christopher Luxon as part of the National Party's election campaign?
Well, the member well knows, or at least she likes to assert, that she knows a lot about the income tax system, and that is calculated on the full year, which we are only part way through.
So, supplementary.
Just wait for a few minutes, a few seconds. Okay.
Is the government delivering what it said it would when by the first week there were 32,407 Family Boost claims, but only 8,672 claims have been approved and paid?
That's right.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm very happy to correct the member's numbers. The latest stats for Family Boost, up to including the 15th of October, 44,952 households have registered. There have been 38,206 claims relating to 35,489 households. Inland Revenue has paid $6.2 million to 15,749 households since 7 October. And Inland Revenue expects around 100,000 households will be eligible for Family Boost. Can I repeat again? I want families to go onto that IRD website and claim for their entitlement.
Supplementary. Is the government delivering what it said it would when she promised more than 100,000 families will get Family Boost but have under-delivered with only 8,672 being paid in the first week.
Mr. Speaker, I stand by the statements I have made that around 100,000 households will be eligible for FamilyBoost, and I am pleased that the number of successful claims is growing every day. And I would say that this is far more effective than a promise to take GST off bananas and give supermarkets tax relief.
Supplementary. Does she agree with the IRD that said FamilyBoost would require significant effort by recipients to access the product, which may create a barrier to product uptake, particularly for parents of young children who are already time poor? And why did she not just do ECE 20 hours free?
Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment that our childcare policy would put direct cash into people's bank accounts, and the way that we are delivering it will achieve that. We were also advised, Mr. Speaker, that other ways of doing that would take many months and years of delay, and we weren't prepared to make that delay. We wanted that cash for families.